Facebook Live. Dan?
Hello, folks. If you'll bear with us about a couple of minutes, we'll be right with you, okay? We're going Facebook Live also.
David, I told Chris this, but there'll be 5 questions and we'll alternate. And so Chris will get the first one, you get the second one. Next question, we'll switch that around.
Sure.
How about the chime?
Oh yeah, and there's a chime. When there's 15 seconds left, Jenny's got a chime with her phone that she'll ring, and you'll know that you're bumping up on that 2 minutes.
I can hear it.
All right.
Is it too loud?
That's just the right level.
Yeah,
I think it's fun.
it's plenty loud. We'll hear it.
We might think it's the doorbell, right? So
Were y'all getting any echo in our
No.
conversation? Everything sounds good?
No, it's perfect.
everything sounds good.
Good.
Good evening, and welcome to the United States House District 7 Candidates Forum hosted by the Columbus Chamber of Commerce and Tourism. I'm Dan Strickland, Chairman of the Chamber. I would like to thank each of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us this afternoon. The Chamber is committed to ensuring the healthy business climate and the heart of what is our advocacy efforts. As the voice of the business in our community, we take great pride in hosting candidates forums to give our members and the general public an opportunity to hear from candidates about their position on issues that affect our business environment and the community. I would also like to thank the candidates. Thank you for your attendance, more importantly, your willingness to serve our community. As we begin the forum, would you mind bowing with me for a word of prayer, please? Lord, we just thank you for this beautiful day. We ask your blessings upon our chamber, its members, and our communities. Be with us during this meeting, and everything we do, let it be in your honor. Amen.
Amen.
Again, welcome, and our moderator for this evening is Les High, publisher of the News Reporter. There's a great partnership for the Chamber, and we're thankful for their consistent promotion of Chamber events and programs. We thank you, Les, for your leadership within the Chamber and for moderating tonight's event, or this evening's event. Welcome, Les. Good to see you.
All right, thanks, Dan. Thanks to the Chamber for hosting this event. We have 2 candidates for the District 7 race for Congress. The first is Christopher Ward, a Democrat. Christopher, thank you for being here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
And Congressman David Rouser, Republican incumbent. David, good to have you here tonight.
Good to be with you.
All right. Well, everyone got a copy of the rules, but for our Facebook Live audience and for others, we'll do a brief overview just so everybody knows what the rules are. So the questions were submitted prior to the event, and each candidate will have the opportunity to answer 5 questions. And these were not shared with the candidates beforehand. The responses will be 2 minutes, and you'll hear a chime that will be activated 15 seconds before the end of the 2 minutes. We'll pose questions in alphabetical order, then rotate the order thereafter. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement when I finish reading this. I'll read the questions, and some have 2 or 3 parts to them, so if you need me to read them again, feel free to ask. You can take notes, but you can't use charts and graphs and that type of thing. And then at the end, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. And if you will just mute your microphones when the other is speaking, and we're good to go. All right, so Congressman Rouser, will you begin with your 2-minute opening statement?
Well, thank you, Les. And I want to thank Dan for the opening prayer. You know, it's always been my thought that until we get back to the moral and spiritual principles that made the country great, only then will we begin to correct the number of problems that we have around the country that have been on full display the last several months in particular. But it's always been my great honor and privilege to represent the 7th Congressional District, Southeastern North Carolina. As I think most of the listeners and viewers know, I serve on the House Agriculture Committee, where I've been since day one. Also serve on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which I've been on since day one. And should I stick around for a while, both my own willingness and the willingness of the voters, you know, I'm in line to be chairman of both of those committees over the next course of several years, if it so works out. I have been really pleased to have been serving in office for 3 terms now. My first term, we had President Obama in the White House, and but still accomplished a lot at the local level, in particular for our veterans, for the agriculture community, and for our coastal communities. My second term was the start of the Trump administration, and we did a tremendous amount for the country, including tax reform, regulatory reform, reform of the Veterans Administration, making it much more accountable to our veterans, rebuilding the military. We've had an energy renaissance in this country. We passed the Cures Act, which focused on beefing up the NIH and other research areas for infectious disease, in fact, which is helping us towards therapeutics and vaccines. And then, of course, and here in the last term, the House has been in the minority, and so it's a different environment, divided government, but continue to work day in and day out for the benefit of the citizens of the 7th District.
Right. Thank you, Congressman Rouser. Christopher, your 2-minute statement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Les, Dan, Mr. Rouser. It's great to be here. So I'm relatively unknown, but let me just tell you who I am real quick. I'm not a politician. I've actually was a private citizen up until a few months ago. I was born and raised in Tabor City, North Carolina, here in Columbus County. And I say I'm self-made, but that's not exactly true. I'm more of a product of North Carolina, of its schools, of its education system, of its values, and of its faith and churches. And so I went on to NC State in Raleigh, got a nuclear engineering degree, and then later on a master's. I work in the pharmaceutical field now. I have businesses in southeastern North Carolina. So why I decided to run just a few months ago, back in December, was I decided that I felt like I could better represent the district than Mr. Rouser. So what I want to do is I want to do great things for North Carolina. I think I can be a bigger advocate for the counties that are part of this district. I want so badly to use the office to try to bring jobs and prosperity to the area, to bring manufacturing, to just boost the people out of poverty. I don't have a silver bullet, mind you, but there's so many things that I think we can leverage, that I could leverage the power of the office to do, aside from just making laws in DC. So I've got a great American spirit, if you will, that I don't take no for an answer. So I'm willing to roll up my sleeves, get dirty, figure out what we can do to bring jobs to Columbus County, to all over southeastern North Carolina, how we can raise people out of poverty, how we can provide affordable and accessible health care, how we can get education, more educational opportunities to people. So it'll be cyclical. Once we are able to bring people out of poverty, once we're able to provide more educational opportunities, we can definitely do great things for North Carolina. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, so 5 questions. Congressman Rouser, you'll have the opportunity first on question number 1. Then Christopher, you'll have the second, same question right after Congressman Rouser.
Okay.
And these were submitted to the chamber. Soon after the COVID-19 pandemic began, U.S. GDP fell by 32.9% in the second quarter, the worst decline ever for a quarter, and the national debt is $26.6 trillion, or $214,000 per taxpayer. Congressman Rouser, what keeps you up at night about the economy as it's related to the pandemic, and what would you do to stabilize the economy and expand it?
Well, first, I think it's important to note that COVID hit late March. And so April, May, and June in particular, we knew it was going to be a bloodbath. We knew that the economy was going to suffer greatly, and the numbers reflect that. I think what we also know is that if you're going to grow the economy, you got to get people back to work. And of course, you have a virus. The best way to combat it is obviously get a therapeutic on the market. I think this administration has done a remarkable job in terms of research and cutting the red tape and streamlining the process to get a therapeutic to the market very quickly. And of course, a vaccine is important as well. But in my own personal opinion, I think the therapeutic is even more important. Because quite frankly, you're going to have a lot of people, probably 30 to 40% of the country, that's not going to take the vaccine. They're going to be scared of the vaccine in spite of what the FDA may say. So I think the administration's done a remarkable job if you consider the hurdles that are in place for those type of developments to take place. And the fact that we're probably going to have a good therapeutic or more on the market by September, I think is a real testament to the administration and Congress working with the administration to provide the funding and other leveraging points to bring the private sector to the table to help with that. I think you've also got to have tax cuts. The payroll tax cut, I think, is a great idea at this particular time. And you've got to continue to roll back rules and regulations to allow this economy to grow. But the other thing you've got to do is you've got to get folks back to work. And this unemployment rate of $600 per week is a real problem for every small business out there. You can't grow the economy if you can't get your business open. And that speaks to decisions that have been made at the state level as it relates to closures or partial closures. But it also is incumbent upon having workers. And you can't have workers if you're paying them more to stay home than if they go to work. And that's what that $600 has done. So I think you've got to roll that back. The president rolled it back slightly with his executive order. I don't think it went quite far enough, quite candidly, because I think that's a real key to growing the economy again. If you don't have businesses open and you don't have workers, you're not going to grow the economy. And that's how you deal with the debt long term as well, by the way. Growing the economy, you have more revenues coming into the Treasury.
All right, great. Thank you, Congressman Rouser. Christopher, do you need to have the question repeated? You heard the statistics, but basically, what keeps you up at night about the economy, and what do we do to fix it?
So I think the current administration has actually failed miserably at its attempt to control and handle COVID-19. We're a developed country. We're the greatest country in the world, most advanced, richest. But we have places like South Korea that's got 50 million people that have only had 300 deaths total in total, and we've had over 2,000 here in North Carolina. So, and we only have 10 million people in North Carolina. So I think we failed miserably. We failed to act with testing, with quick and easy and free testing, with tracing, and then with quarantining. I think had we done all that at the beginning, we don't even do that right today. I mean, there's weeks, people can wait weeks in order to receive their test back. So the economy has definitely fallen off a cliff. So again, if we had taken our time, had we addressed this issue originally, I don't think we would be in this situation today. We wouldn't have the deaths that are on our hands, and we wouldn't have the economic impact. If people could be tested as quickly as they are when they meet the president of the United States and decide whether they go into work or go back home to be quarantined, then everyone would show up for work. I would go in, I'd take a test, and I would determine then and there if I was contagious or sick, and then either leave, go home, or go to work. So I think what's happening now, what's going to keep me up at night is simply that there's so many Americans that are in the labor force that are servers and waitresses and the like that don't have any source of income right now, period. And they put their lives on the line in order to go into the restaurants to work, and they don't have the money to pay their rent or their mortgage. And the $600 a month, I have talked to people, they said that they can't get workers to come back because they are getting paid too much. We need to somehow figure out how to make sure that people that aren't at work are compensated like they were before, and then so that they don't feel that they don't have to choose between work and staying home.
All right. Thank you. Second question, Christopher, you'll lead with this one, followed by Congressman Rouser. This question is, the first one was more related to COVID. This is more about small business, which is very important to the chamber and, of course, to towns like Whiteville. And the question is, what can Congress do to shore up small businesses and struggling Main Street mom and pops? Secondly, do you favor legislation to break up monopolies like Facebook and Amazon?
So let's talk. I think what they did with the Paycheck Protection Act program was great. You know, you can give these businesses money so that they can keep their employees on, and if they keep their employees on during the course of the pandemic, then that becomes a loan that is forgiven. It becomes just a grant. So I think that was a great thing. I think Congress can definitely do more to help these small businesses in the terms of grants or additional money. They are the lifeblood of North Carolina and the United States. They employ so many people, so we definitely have to provide them a lifeline in addition to what we've already done. So I definitely would support giving them more money, but also we need to. I am a Democrat, and I don't believe in throwing money out the door. But so we need to have conditions associated with all that. I think that there's so many people in the Paycheck Protection Plan that got money that were big businesses and stuff that didn't need it. It should have been allocated to the mom and the pop, to the small town, to small businesses and the like. I think for Facebook and for Google and the like, they are monopolies, and those have been broken up in the past. So I'm not, honestly, I don't know right this moment what I would choose to do about them. They are big. They control a big portion of the internet and the commerce and Amazon. I think we need to look at laws that maybe prevent them from stealing ideas from like small businesses and stuff. I read just recently that Amazon might make a product that's similar to someone else that makes theirs and then market it at a cheaper price on their website.
Thank you. Congressman Rouser, so what do we do to help Main Street, and do you favor breaking up monopolies?
Well, if you look at life in the economic realm prior to COVID, small businesses were doing as well as they ever had been. And the economy as a whole was doing exceptionally well. And then this virus hits that few people know anything about. The Chinese basically hid it from us, kept it quiet for a long time, were not forthcoming in terms of the nature of the disease and the spread of the disease. And meanwhile, they knew and they permitted that disease to leave China and infect the rest of the world, basically. So we were dealing with a huge unknown at the outset. All the health experts had a different opinion about what it would be and how we should handle it. You had folks that contracted it that obviously passed away. You had others that hardly had a sniffle. The same is true today. There's still a lot we don't know about the disease. But the fact of the matter is Congress stepped forward in a very bipartisan way. It took a little longer than some of us would have liked, but it's better to do something big when you're facing a crisis situation like that than to try to make something perfect. The fact of the matter is we knew we need to get money out the door. The PPP program saved something like 61 million jobs. That's well documented. Had that money not gone out, you wouldn't believe what the lines would be at the unemployment office. So I think Congress moving forward needs to continue to work with the administration to roll back rules and regulations, streamlining process so that you can continue to grow the economy. make tweaks to the tax code, including tax credits for a variety of things, and particularly tax credits and other incentives to encourage people to go out and utilize the restaurants, patronize the restaurants and other businesses out there that need help on Main Street, and basically get government out of the way. But of course, a business has to be permitted to open, and that's a state level policy. You're not going to grow the economy if you can't open up a business. And then as it relates to the monopolies, Google, Facebook, and the others, my personal feeling is that as long as they're abiding by the rules, and so far Google and some of these others have not been, they censor speech. And that's pretty well documented, and there needs to be punishment and repercussion for that. But generally speaking, what happens to a monopoly is they get a little lazy, and then there's an upstart that comes in and undercuts them. So
we'll have to. I'm sorry, Dave. We'll have to end you there, but thank you.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear the cut.
No problems. No problems. So, Congressman Rouser, this is your question. It's the third question. It's COVID related, and both of you all have touched on this a bit, but let's go a little bit deeper with it. And here's a question: how would you judge Washington's response to the COVID-19 pandemic thus far? What, if anything, would you have done differently? And what do we need to do now to protect vulnerable citizens and balance reopening the economy? And then the third part of that is, to what degree should schools reopen?
So let me answer that this way. It's a complicated scenario because we have a federalist system. So you've got the federal government, state government, and local government. And the decision to open or not to open businesses, that's been a state level decision, and I think rightly so. My personal viewpoint is, if you look at all the results around the country, and now that we understand more about the virus, not everything about the virus, but more about the virus, I think if you could wave a magic wand and go back to it, you probably shut things down for 2 or 3 weeks, make sure that the hospitals and other institutions of medical care have the resources that they need, but you keep businesses open rather than shutting them down, but you require that they have social distancing policies and other mechanisms in place to protect the public to the best of their ability. The fact of the matter is, there's some folks that this virus really goes after. Generally speaking, it's those who are elderly, and particularly those that have an underlying condition. Those younger, although not exclusively, those younger tend to fare with it better. I know 10 people that have had the disease. 1 of them passed away. The other 9 just had sniffles. And so knowing all that, I think you can tailor the regulations as it relates to opening businesses in such a way that you protect the public at large while continuing the economy. You can't take a $4 trillion economy and just, a $24 trillion economy and just shut it down. You can't do that. You end up with a train wreck. And now we're getting the train back on the tracks, but it's going to take a little bit. And we're going to have good, solid economic policies moving forward. And these businesses have to be allowed to reopen. I'm talking about all of them. And you've got to have employees that have an incentive to get back to work if you're going to grow the economy again.
Great. All right. And so, Christopher, your response. Do you need me to read the question again?
Yeah. Could you read that one again? That was.
Sure can. How would you judge Washington's response to the COVID-19 pandemic thus far? What, if anything, would you have done differently? And what do we need to do now to protect vulnerable citizens and balance reopening the economy? We were going to talk about schools, but we ran out of time. So those two.
Okay.
Points.
So I think the response from DC was awful, actually. So what if we declared it a national emergency? If we had done the things that other countries had done, had we done the increased testing, had we done the tracing and the quarantine, I don't think we would have seen as many deaths as what we've seen today. I think we would have been in a lot better situation than what we are. But hindsight's 2020, but only just a few months ago it was Trump that said that we had won, that everything was great, and that we could carry on. But that's not the case. Even we've talked about our governor that wouldn't allow the Republican convention to come to to Charlotte because it would draw huge crowds and he couldn't ensure that the safety of anyone. Well, Trump threw a tantrum and then they moved it to Florida. And then not too long, then just recently Trump said, well, now we can't have it in either place because of COVID concerns. So I don't think the virus was taken seriously. I don't think the national response was what it should have been. That's the whole purpose of the federal government, is that we the federal government is huge. It has the resources, it has the capability, it has all this awesome power to do to help the American public. This should have been the first thing that's the first responsibility of government, of the federal government, is to protect its people. So we should have done things differently. We should have done the testing, the tracing, the quarantine. We should have, we should have protected American citizens a lot better. I know here in Columbus County that there's one of the highest percentages of deaths among people in terms of the population. It's the elderly, it's Black people, it's people in nursing homes and stuff that have fared the worst. And I would say, to Mr. Rouser's point, if 1 in 10 were to die, then that is an awful number. That's some 33 million Americans that could potentially have passed away. So I think that the response should have been a lot different. We should have taken it a lot more seriously. And I don't think we would have had as many. There's I think 2,200 people today that in North Carolina have died alone. So, and some 160,000+ in America. I think that's tragic that we could have done so much better.
Okay.
That even one death is too much.
All right. So the fourth question is very concise. And this goes to you, Christopher, first. Race relations after the George Floyd killing were laid bare. How do we unite Americans when it comes to race?
So this has been a topic that I've been talking to a lot recently. I talk to a lot of people that are older white Southerners that do not believe that they're racist, and I believe they're not either. But the way they've been brought up, the way that the history has been taught to them. I did not know about the Tulsa race riots. I didn't know about the coup d'etat in Wilmington back in 1898. So I think of myself as being a smart man sometimes, but the way history was taught to me, I did not put all this stuff together. I didn't know about these things that were never taught. So now, once we talk about once we put together the Civil War and the Jim Crow laws and the Ku Klux Klan, and how even thriving Black communities were taken apart and people massacred and stuff, and we sometimes only remember recent history. So we've got to do better to educate our people. I think that with George Floyd, just a few years ago, if you took a knee, then you were considered it was un-American. But now people look at this video where 8.5 minutes that the officer has his knee on his neck, and we're like, didn't we just see this just a few years ago? I thought this was over. I thought this was done with. How can somebody be videotaping an officer and a man plead for his life, and yet he doesn't come off his neck, and calls for his mom? So it's disturbing to see that, how we can't as a nation to say that we need some reform. We need to do something a little bit different. Maybe there is inherent racism that we don't even realize that we have. So there's a lot of growing and stuff that needs to happen in America. A lot of history that we were not taught. A lot of things that we need to recognize and realize that we're all human beings, and that everybody deserves. I think we all realize that we're all the same underneath our skin. We want a good life. We want a better life for our children. We just want to live the American dream.
Great, thank you. Congressman Rouser, how do we unite Americans when it comes to race?
First, I want to mention to Jennifer that you can't hear the chime at all, or at least I can't. If she can turn it up so I know how much time's left.
All right, she's right here. So
okay, but this is a complicated problem. I've got multiple thoughts on it. I go back to my original opening statement where I said, a lot of these issues you're never going to solve until you get back to the moral and spiritual principles that made the country great. And I mean, getting back, when I say moral and spiritual principles, I'm talking about the act of forgiveness, the act of putting aside selfish ambition, the act of doing for one what you would have them, do for you, the golden rule, so to speak, honesty and integrity. What happened to George Floyd was a travesty. There's no question about that. It shouldn't have happened. It was murder. And I believe that justice eventually will prevail in that particular case. But you had elements in this country who took that, and then then you had professional anarchists and others who are very well funded, by the way, who come into these communities. They infiltrate those who want to peacefully protest. They incite violence and attack the police. And this whole notion of defund the police and get rid of law enforcement, have counselors for communities rather than police officers, quite frankly, is ludicrous and dangerous. If we're going to improve things in this country moving forward, I think there has to be an attitude by all, regardless of skin color. And I think it's important for Americans to look at themselves as Americans, not necessarily as white, not as black, not as Hispanic, not as whatever, but as Americans, because we all know that this is the greatest country God ever allowed to be created. And if we're going to keep it, if we're going to preserve it, we can't be at odds with each other over these emotional issues. We have to forgive, we have to move forward, and we have to set a common goal on how we're going to bring the country together, and we can do that.
Great, thank you. All right, gentlemen, last question of the night. Congressman Rouser, this goes to you first. This is a healthcare question. It's a big question now because of COVID, but even moving past that, it's going to be a big issue because it was a big issue in the election even before COVID. Really, three parts of this question. What can we do to lower healthcare and drug cost? Would any plan you support include guarantees to protect Americans with pre-existing conditions? And what is your position on Medicare for all, or at least lowering the threshold from 65 to say 60 or 55?
Well, first of all, let me say Medicare for all is Medicare for no one. That will bankrupt the country quicker than you can imagine. That would run every single doctor right on out of business. And technically, you might have a card that says Medicare, but if you don't have a doctor to go to or good quality care, what good is it? So Medicare for all basically is Medicare for no one. That's a fundamental point that needs to be made. So one of the major achievements the House had under the first 2 years of the Trump administration was we actually passed real common sense healthcare reform that included protections for pre-existing conditions. I don't know any proposal out there, I don't know any Republican out there that does not support covering pre-existing conditions. I think anything moving forward after this election, no matter who's president, if Republicans have a majority in the House and the Senate, whatever is moved forward on healthcare reform, it's going to have free market principles embedded in it, and it's going to protect pre-existing conditions. The way you improve Medicare, quite frankly, is you improve the overall healthcare system, and therefore what that means is you got to have innovation. You got to have new products coming to market. You got to have new technologies that improve health outcomes. And as you improve health outcomes, you actually begin to drive down healthcare cost long term. Healthcare reform, by the way, if done the right way, will save the federal government billions in Medicare and Medicaid expenses long term. And those two programs are two of the programs that contribute mightily to the annual deficit, which obviously affects the debt. Sounds like I've probably run out of time right there, but those are some of the key things that need to be done as we move forward.
Great, thank you. Christopher, do you need that repeated at all?
I think I can answer it. So the Republicans, when they find a line, they stick to it. So what people need to realize in this day and time is that things like Social Security was only formed in the 1930s, and Medicare was only done in 1965. So we think of these, we get touted, they're called socialist programs and they cost too much and stuff. but these have not been around forever. And so can you imagine having to live with, if you were elderly and without Social Security or without Medicare? So how do we lower healthcare costs? Well, right now, healthcare is a business with Cigna and Blue Cross and Blue Shield and stuff. What you pay for healthcare is different from what I pay for healthcare. So I think the Affordable Care Act in 2010 will be another one of those Social Security moments and those Medicare moments where people will look back and say, I can't believe there was a time that, elderly people didn't have a type of pension, an old age pension, and that they weren't covered by healthcare, and that people, just the general population, wasn't covered by healthcare. So I'm for expanding. I know there's no such thing as a free lunch, but we're supposed to be the wealthiest country in the world, the greatest nation on earth. So I think we can afford or try to figure out how to offer healthcare to all its people. Maybe we get the business aspect out of it, so that people. I sat down with a couple from Australia recently and was chatting with them, and they said, we don't quite understand your healthcare system. You apparently you go in the hospital, you give them a card, they take you in the back. Depending on that little card, you get whatever level of healthcare service there is associated with that. In Australia, another civilized nation, developed nation, we simply walk in, they take us in the back, they fix us up, and they send us out. So I'm trying to understand why we can't do the same, why we can't be as forward thinking as say Australia. Why is it that card that you have in your hand determines your level of care?
Great, thank you. All right, gentlemen, that's all of our questions for tonight, and that leaves us with an opportunity to have a 1-minute closing statement. So, Christopher, if you'll do that first 1-minute closing statement.
Okay. So again, I'm Chris Ward. I'm running for Congress. I'm a relative unknown, a private citizen. But what I want to do in the office is to help the people of North Carolina. I want to bring jobs, manufacturing jobs, and opportunity to southeastern North Carolina. I know I want to bring the USS Kitty Hawk home to berth along the USS North Carolina. I would love to, even if I don't get elected, maybe Mr. Rouser can pick up that cause along with the other senators and congressmen in North Carolina. I don't think it's been dismantled yet. I want to do so much for the people. I want to I think you can go out, reach out to people. You can use the power and the influence other than just laws, but to bring businesses, to bring momentum to the area that can cause great things, and that we can do so much more. We can raise people out of poverty. We can give them affordable and accessible health care. We can give them great education opportunities. We can do so much. I think we just need the opportunity to do it.
Thank you. Congressman Rouser.
Hold on.
She's got it working now.
Just a moment.
There you go.
Well, Les, let me thank everybody who worked hard to put this forum together. Appreciate all the effort on it. Appreciate the opportunity to participate. And let me say again that it's a high honor and privilege to represent the people of southeastern North Carolina. We have a great team. My DC staff and my district staff, they all do incredible work, and really fortunate to have them, and they're very honored to serve as well alongside me. We're going to continue to work hard for our veterans, for our agriculture and rural communities in particular, and of course have a lot of issues that we deal with on a day-to-day and annual basis related to our coastal communities. Look forward to continuing to do that work should the voters decide to re-elect me in the fall. And of course, as we move forward in dealing with COVID and rebuilding the economy afterwards, I'm going to do everything I can to help enact common sense policies that get the government out of the way so that businesses can do what they do best. And of course, a lot of that has to be done at the state level, not all at the federal. But appreciate the opportunity to be with you all tonight, and look forward to continuing to serve if the voters so choose come November. Thank you, Les.
Thank you. It's I appreciate the chamber putting this this forum on. It gives a chance to see different viewpoints, but we also appreciate both of your willingness to serve our nation. It's not all glory. It's a tough job, and we thank you for your willingness to serve. It's been a good evening. It's been very informative. we'll have another forum Thursday night at 5:30, beginning with North Carolina Senate and House candidates. So look forward to seeing you there. Thanks to our audience for joining in, and everyone have a good night.
Thank you.
Les.
Good night. Good night.